Sector Review, Investment Banking. Sector Overview. Investment banking is a specific division of banking related to the creation of capital for the companies. Investment banks underwrite new debts and equity securities for all types of corporations. Investment banks also provide guidance to issuers regarding the issue and placement of stock. In addition to the services listed above, investment banks also aid in the sale of securities in some instances. They also help to facilitate mergers and acquisitions, reorganization and broke trades for the institutions and private investors. They can also trade securities for their own accounts. History: India. Greenplace Bank began investment banking, merchant banking in India in 1967, with RBI issuing the second license to Citi in 1970. These two banks primarily provided services which included loan syndication, equity raising, and other advisory services. In 1972, a Banking Commission report asserted the need of merchant banking services in India by public sector banks. The Commission recommended the same structure as American Investment Bank, Glass-Steagall Act. Merchant banks are meant to manage investments and provide advisory services. SBI was the first Indian public sector bank to set up its merchant banking division in 1972. This was followed by Bank of India, Central Bank of India, Bank of Baroda, and many more. SBI CAPS and IDBI CAPS are two prime examples of merchant banks in India today. Currently, there are 136 merchant banks registered with SEBI. Currently, without holding a certificate of registration granted by the Securities and Exchange Board of India, no person can act as a merchant banker. The categories for which merchant banking registration may be granted by SEBI. Category first: to carry on the activities of issue management and to act as advisor, consultant, manager, underwriter, portfolio manager. Category 2: to act as advisor, consultant, co-manager, underwriter, portfolio manager. Category 3: to act as underwriter, advisor, or consultant to an issue. Category 4: to act only as advisor or consultant to an issue. The capital requirement depends upon category. The minimum net worth requirement for acting as merchant banker are Category 1, 5 crore rupees, Category 2, 50 lakh rupees, Category 3, 20 lakh rupees, and Category 4, nil. Merchant banks versus investment banks. As a general rule, investment banks focus on initial public offerings, IPOs, and large public and private share offerings. Merchant banks tend to operate on small-scale companies and offer creative equity financing, bridge financing, mezzanine financing, and a number of corporate credit products. While investment banks tend to focus on large companies, merchant banks offer their services to companies that are too big for venture capital firms to serve properly, but are still too small to make compelling public share offering on a large exchange. Merchant banks can also be said as a British term for investment banks. Merchant banker has been defined under the Securities and Exchange Board of India, Merchant Bankers Rules 1992, as any person who is engaged in the business of issue management, either by making arrangements regarding selling, buying, or subscribing to securities as manager, consultant, advisor, or rendering corporate advisory services in relation to such issue management. To conclude the argument, merchant banking has different connotations in the US and other markets. In the US, it is primarily a fund-based activity, while in UK and in India, it implies intermediation and advisory activity in connection with public flotation of securities. Investment banking thus can be defined as a broader term which covers both funds and fee-based activities. Merchant banking can either be a fund-based activity or a fee-based activity. Top 10 investment banking firms in India 2010. JP Morgan, UBS AG, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, HSBC, Morgan Stanley, ICICI Securities, Kotak Mahindra, SBI Capital Markets, Ambit Corp Finance, Best Investment Banks in the World 2010. Bank of America. Revenue $150.45 billion. Net income $6.276 billion. Total assets $2.223 trillion. Total equity $231.444 billion. Employees 282,408. Wells Fargo. Revenue $98.636 billion. Profit $12.275 billion. Total assets $1.243 trillion. Total equity $111.786 billion. Employees 267,300. JP Morgan Chase. Revenue $100.434 billion. Operating income $48.082 billion. Profit $11.728 billion. Total assets $2.031 trillion. Total equity $165.365 billion. Employees 232,939. Citigroup. Revenue $80.285 billion. Total assets $2.002 trillion. Total equity $152.700 billion. Employees 263,000. Some other really big banks which cater to investments include Barclays, Royal Bank of Scotland, BNP Paribas, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, HSBC, UBS Investment Bank, Credit Suisse, Morgan Stanley, Royal Bank of Canada, RBC Capital Market, Nomura Holdings,